Okay, today's topic is high blood pressure and its underlying root causes. So you need to be paying attention to this video because unfortunately, the majority of us have high blood pressure. The statistics show that 2 out of 3 of us have high blood pressure, and 7 out of 10 of those people are going to go on to have a cardiovascular event, meaning a heart attack or a stroke. And those statistics become even more alarming for people that are 65 years and older. So let's first start talking about what is blood pressure. Normal blood pressure typically is 120 over 80. High blood pressure has gotten to be defined as 140 over 90. Anything like in the ballpark of 200 over 180 is defined as dangerous high blood pressure, that you could actually have a heart attack or a stroke at any moment. So when you typically go to the doctor, when you have, say, a high blood pressure, and defined as, we'll say, 140 over 90, what typically happens? He gives you some blood pressure medication. They come in the form of beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, diuretics. From my experience, what happens, because don't forget, I'm not just an integrative healthcare practitioner, I'm also a physical therapist. What I have seen clinically from my patients, they are tired, they get dizzy often. Because they get dizzy, they're afraid of falling, so they sit a lot. They don't go out as much as they used to, and they're not enjoying life. Over time, little by little by little, there's not much life left, because unfortunately, while they've controlled their blood pressure, they now have lost all the fun that there is in life. And I don't think that's the answer. As an integrative healthcare practitioner and a physical therapist, I say we can do better. And that is part of the reason that I became an integrative health practitioner. I started to be diagnosed with high blood pressure. My blood pressure was 180 over 140. Like I said, that's in the ballpark of dangerous type of blood pressure. Did I get on any of those conventional medicine medications? No. I'm healthy, and my blood pressure now is 100 over 61. Yeah, I'm full of life. I don't feel fatigued, and I don't feel like I am dizzy anymore, any of that stuff. You know why? Because I chose natural solutions rather than being on conventional medications. Before we start talking about underlying root causes, what I want you to begin to also know is that there's 2 responses that happen with the body. The first response is our rested and our relaxed type of state. It's our normal state. The second state is that it's our fight or flight response, also known as the sympathetic nervous system. So, like, for example, it's normal, like if you're an athlete, and again, this is an example, if you're a sprinter, and what happens is the adrenaline needs to flow. You need to kick in going fast. You need to go in their focus and determination and confidence. All of that gets turned on with the sympathetic nervous system. It's a normal thing that we need to accomplish tasks. You can even say when people have a deadline, you turn on the same response as you do with the sprinter. It's that response physiologically. There's a whole cascade of responses that happen physiologically. I'm not going to go into all of them. The purpose of this video is how it correlates with the blood vessels. What happens during the sympathetic nervous system is that as things are getting turned on, a lot of calcium is released into the bloodstream. And the response to that, because it's in the bloodstream, it causes the blood vessels to constrict. So what happens as you're taking your blood pressure, the blood pressure goes up. And you need that to happen during these particular kind of events. However, in our society we live in, our society is like stressed out constantly. It constantly thinks it's in fight or flight. So instead of it turning it on in certain instances and then going back to the regular parasympathetic nervous system of the rest and relaxation state, we're in constantly the stressed one, constantly where our blood vessels are constricted. You see where I'm going with this? There's an underlying root cause of that, and we need to address that rather than putting a Band-Aid on and giving you blood pressure medications. Because again, you heard the side effects of what happens when you're on blood pressure medication for the rest of your life. If we can get to the underlying root cause, then we can give you normal blood pressure. And if you have normal blood pressure, you're going to have a normal life. Isn't that better? So how do we look for some underlying root causes of blood pressure? Yes, you can go get your blood work done through your doc, and he's going to give you similar information. We can look at your calcium levels, your magnesium, your potassium, your sodium levels. Now, that's where the difference actually begins, because he's going to look at just the individual numbers. As an integrative health practitioner, the test that I use is an at-home functional medicine lab test, and we take a look at those electrolytes. We look at, yes, the individual level or number for that particular electrolyte, but this is where the differences begin, because we look at ratios. The ratios that are extremely important are the calcium and the magnesium ratio, as well as the sodium and the potassium ratio. Those two ratios are what we call stress indicators. And if you go back to what I was saying, that the sympathetic nervous system is when your body's under stress. Stress sometimes for very good reason and hopefully for a short period of time. But what happens when it's in a chronic state of that stress, that we need to take a look at those two ratios to tell us what's going on if you're in that stress state and how we can balance it back out. The ratio for the calcium and the magnesium is, in normal circumstances, should be 7-1, meaning there should be more calcium because your body needs that to deal with the stress, but it needs a certain amount of magnesium to balance it out. Same thing with the sodium. It's not so much, because a lot of times even the doc will say, besides putting on the blood pressure meds, he'll say, cut out the salt. That's, something that he saw maybe high on the blood work. So he says, lower the sodium. It sounds reasonable, but it depends. It's not just blanketly saying that. It's the ratio with the sodium and the potassium is it's 2.5-1. So it depends on what's happening with the potassium level. So unless we can understand where your levels are, you really aren't getting to the underlying answer of how to deal with this underlying cause. So if we can do this test, I can begin to say, it's not so much the sodium, it's the calcium and the magnesium. And we can balance that out by giving, yes, supplement kind of recommendations as well as food recommendations. And we'll get to that in part 2 of this series. But for today, I just am trying to point out that things, if they're balanced out correctly, because giving the diuretics or the calcium channel blockers or the beta blockers, they don't balance anything out. You see where I'm going with that? If I can show you what is out of balance and how we can balance those things out, you will achieve a normal blood pressure without having all those side effects that the blood pressure medications typically, unfortunately, provide you. So that's where the difference of getting to the root cause and providing the answer of how to balance things out. And the same principle with the calcium and the magnesium, we would look at the sodium levels and balance that out appropriately. Another lab test that we do is called the adrenal stress hormone test. And that's where we look at your stress hormone. We look at a lot of different things on that test. But in particular, again, this video is aiming towards blood pressure. We're looking specifically at your cortisol hormone levels. And that, again, is a stress hormone. And it's the stress, the chronic stress, that is keeping the blood pressure up. So what is an interesting research find that they found is when your blood pressure is high at night is where you are having the most danger of a cardiovascular event, meaning a heart attack or a stroke. On this adrenal stress hormone test, we test cortisol, but not just cortisol, because regular blood work will only be testing your cortisol level at that particular time of the day. We do it so that we get a reading in the morning, we get a second reading at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, we get a third reading at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we get one also before you go to bed. And the reason why this is important, because you're never going to go to a lab and get tested before you go to bed. And that's the only way that reading can occur. So the functional medicine lab tests test throughout those 4 times. And what the research has found, when your blood pressure is high at night, that's where it's the most dangerous. And by seeing what your cortisol level is, because that's your stress hormone, if that is really high at that particular time, that's in correlation with high blood pressure. Again, because it's all that series of events that happen. And that's what it constricts the blood vessel, it increases the blood pressure. So we can see that on the test. And that's where we can balance out your cortisol levels. So do you understand? It's not just the blood pressure medication masking the symptoms. If it's the cortisol, then we can deal with how to bring that back down so that it's not at a dangerous level. If it's the calcium and the magnesium ratio, we can balance that out. If it's the sodium potassium ratio, we can balance that out. Also, on this minerals and metals test, we can also test for heavy metals. And the heavy metals is something that nobody really tests for regularly, but it's also included on this same test that we're testing the electrolytes. And by finding out if you have a high level of aluminum and mercury, which is most of us, unfortunately, that's what statistics are finding, because of the different water we drink, the cosmetics people have, the cleaning products, a lot of different reasons why we ingest and in our body are heavy metals. If it's detected, we know how to detoxify these heavy metals, and that if that's your underlying root cause of high blood pressure, we're able to help you to take care of that, to help you bring your blood pressure down without being on blood pressure medication. So what am I trying to say here in this video? You need to be tested properly. You need to have information so that we're not guessing of why you have blood pressure, high blood pressure, and how to handle the underlying root cause. Because if we know what your underlying root cause, we can give you your life back. It doesn't have to be blood pressure medication that has a lot of different side effects. So if any of this information hit home with you, are you experiencing any of the high blood pressure type of symptoms? Get with me to get tested in one of these functional medicine lab tests that can uncover the root cause type of problems. Because once I can uncover the root cause, I can provide natural solutions so that you don't have to ever be on blood pressure medication, and yet your blood pressure is going to become normal so that you can feel great. I hope it's your bottom line, because I know it's my bottom line. It's about staying as healthy as you can for as long as you can. Stay tuned for part 2 for the natural solutions. Have a great day, everybody.